Hello, it's the Kevin Mandeville Show, episode number 7, coming at you live right here on YouTube every Tuesday and Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And hey, give this a subscribe here on YouTube, get notifications when we go live on air, and subscribe at kevinmandeville.com/newsletter. I'm a bit behind on emails, but send in now all of my newsletter content directly to you. Make sure you're subscribed. Get some cool email hacks into your inbox. All right, let's get into the topics for today's show. We're kicking off with a cool tool that hit the Twitter sphere today, kind of went popular, remove.bg. And what this does is it's going to remove image backgrounds for you. You can see here some of the examples that they have. This really works great. It's designed to work with people. So it will remove backgrounds with images inside that have people inside it. The more higher quality the image, the better, that I found through my basic testing. So, if you have a lower quality image, it's going to come out rougher. It works pretty well for the most part. I've done a bunch of tests. It works pretty well. So as long as you have a fairly high quality image, it works great. And the only downside is it does cap the output out to 500 pixels wide. So wish that was a little bit higher, but I mean, this will save a ton of time if you just need some basic background cropping out instead of having to put that into Photoshop or whatever design program you're using today, spending all that time fidgeting around. This could give you hours back to your life. So maybe this is helpful for you in your email campaigns. I know for me, especially working on some e-commerce stuff, this will be really helpful. So remove.bg, fun tool. Check it out. Speaking of background images, ActionRocket had a great post on background images over on their blog, emaildesignreview.com. And background images, I mean, there's a lot that goes into background images and getting them to work properly with email. And Jay over at ActionRocket broke down, here's the latest as to what he uses at ActionRocket and what they do. So let's break down this full block of code here. First thing you want to do is have sort of your wrapper parent containing table. Set a role of presentation on that for accessibility. Then you're going to define the width as an HTML attribute and CSS. And then you have your typical table resets of cell padding, cell spacing, border 0, line at center. Then for the table cell of that table, you're going to want to define a background color as an HTML attribute, BG color for Outlook, HTML background attribute for Outlook. Then define the width and height as an HTML attribute for Outlook. Set the V align for Outlook as well. And then you can use CSS styling with the shorthand property. You can just use background and then do all of the values as a shorthand property for basically non-Outlook clients. That's where it's going to work and be supported in. So there really aren't too many limitations there. Then what happens is once you get inside of that table cell element nested inside there, this is where you're going to start VML. So in order to get background images to work properly with Outlook and the word rendering engine, you need to use VML, unfortunately. But let's break it down on what you need to do here. So create your Outlook conditional comment if GTE MSO9 or whatever it is that you're using today. You're going to start with the vImage tag. And so for the vImage, you're going to want to define the XML namespace, which is just standard for sort of VML. You're going to set the fill to true. This defines attributes if there's going to be anything other than a solid color or image. So just set it to true. You can set the stroke attribute to false. And this would be if a line or border is used. So if you don't want to use it and you're just trying to do a background image without any of that styling, set the stroke to false. And then you have the inline CSS styling here, border 0. So make sure the border 0, display inline block. And then you can set the width and height values as points because that's what the Outlook Microsoft Word rendering engine will use. And you can do this by calculating, take whatever pixel values there are for the width and height, multiply it by 0.75. And then you have your source for the image that you're going to use. So that's your vImage tag. Then directly after the vImage tag is going to be your vrect tag. So again, here you have vrect, your XML namespace, fill true, stroke false. It's really the exact same things, including the CSS inlining, border 0, display inline block, and then the width and height with the point values assigned to them. The only thing different here is that you want to give a position absolute to place the rectangle exactly where you need it. And then after a vrect tag is going to be a vfill tag with an HTML attribute opacity. You can set that to 0% or 100% anywhere on that scale, depending on what you need. And then the color HTML attribute, which you want to set as the exact same as the background color. And that's going to ensure it works well for Outlook. And then directly after vfill, finally, we're going to have vtextbox. And vtextbox is only going to have an HTML attribute of inset equals with 4 values. And this is going to essentially define the position starting from the top left at 000. So, and that would just follow your basic HTML order of top, right, bottom, left, going clockwise. And so you could customize those values as you see fit. But if we're just trying to make this as a background image, you can just set it all at 0 because we're positioning it absolutely on the top. And then after that, you're going to have another table row, another table, role equals presentation, the width, both HTML attribute and CSS as defined with the exact dimensions. And then you will have the content in there with the table cell that also has a defined height HTML attribute for Outlook. Again, the word rendering engine needs these defined HTML width and height dimensions to understand the space that it needs. Other clients won't need this, but for the Outlook rendering engine, it needs it. And then you would just close out all the tags in their order. So that's background images and email. Not too hard at all, is it? So shout out Jay. This was a good resource, having the code posted there. A couple other blog posts he points to as well in terms of background images. And what's really cool is that Jay started this Excel or Google sheet, I should say. It's a live working sheet of all of the different techniques, essentially everything from HTML background to CSS shorthand, etc. And all the available clients he's been able to test this on and to see what works where. So you can see all of the limitations and whatnot. So this is a good resource and it has all the code for the different techniques. So good job, Jay. Good job, ActionRocket, for posting this resource. Really good. And I think it definitely helps demystify it a bit for people. So that was definitely a little bit technical there. And if you really enjoyed that, I think you will enjoy Email Tees, which is official apparel for email geeks and the sponsor of the Kevin Mandeville Show. So emailtees.com and at emailtees on Twitter and Instagram. Give us a follow there. You just can rock your email geekdom, your email fandom. You can let the whole world know you're an email geek and you friggin' love it. So there's all different types of merchandise available, from t-shirts, both unisex and women's, long sleeve, crew necks, hoodies, hats, mugs, even socks are available if you want. You can be dressed head to toe in email apparel. So definitely check it out. And there's different types of collections. We've got a Halloween collection that came out during Halloween. Now holiday, the Jolly collection's out. So all different themes to go throughout the year. So check it out. Give Email Tees a follow on Twitter and Instagram at Email Tees, and hey, buy some merchandise. Emailtees.com. Support this show by buying a t-shirt, buying whatever it is that your heart desires for your email geekdom. Emailtees.com. I love this blog post and this resource from Ted Goas of Stack Overflow. He blogged about the new design system they have for HTML emails at Stack Overflow. So he has a blog post over at Medium talking about the process. And what really helped start this is the fact that Stack Overflow, they're a very lean team, very small in resources. They don't have any one person dedicated to email. So they needed something that people could just reference and use who don't have a ton of knowledge on email. And I love how they were able to just start small. So they just started this as a Google Doc. They didn't try to create this full-fledged thing right away. They just started as a Google Doc, started small and iterated from there, which I love that approach. And when you see the final product that they have now at stackoverflow.design/email, it's one of the best design systems I've seen in terms of documentation for email out there. And I know there aren't that many, so which is why I wanted to highlight this, because I think it was a really, really great job. So they have all these guidelines from not only their templates that you can take a look at, and I love it because on the web, you can see what the templates are good for or not good for. It also gives you sort of a desktop and mobile preview and a link directly to the code with these notes, which is awesome. And they typically are working off of either short transactional, long transactional, or promotional email template. But they also have all these other resources into the documentation around best practices for email, which is really cool, really awesome. Pointing things out like, hey, this is why you should use align instead of floats, or you should use role equals presentation on tables. Don't forget about preview text. Just all these reasons behind why you're doing some things in the crazy, wild world of email. They're using Litmus to test, and Papercut, which is an SMT way to send test emails for themselves. They also have FAQ as well to help out understand why they're doing some things the way they are. And then they just have all the different components, sort of the base components of border radius, Outlook conditional CSS, helping educate there, ghost tables, targeting specific Outlook versions, different components, buttons, footers, images, just all of this available, which I just love this. This is just a really, really great job by Stack Overflow. And they even published their email client breakdown usage, and they have 73% of users on Gmail, which is one of the highest Gmail usages I've ever seen from an audience. So that was kind of cool. It goes Gmail, then Yahoo, then Apple Mail, Outlook, iPhone. But a very, very interesting breakdown for sure for Stack Overflow. So that was really cool. I'm definitely going to have Ted on at some point on this show in the program just to talk to him more about this email at Stack Overflow and his whole story. So we'll talk more about it with him at some time, but definitely reference this. This is a great resource, and it's something that I'm going to use as inspiration because I got to get my own design system up and running just for my own personal stuff. So great job, Ted, and great job, Stack Overflow. Thanks for sharing and promoting and publicizing this. We need more of this in email. Another thing that was sort of out in the public now. So Jeffrey Hoffman, who is the creator of Inkcite, which is an open source modular design system for email. He released an update to Inkcite with 1.18 or 1.18. They made improvements to helpers. And there's a bunch of cool things about this. So the first thing that they did was, instead of needing to be these tab delimited multi-line code blocks in TSV file notation, the new version lets you have helpers as their own separate HTML file. So they are now saved in a helper subdirectory, and you can create individual HTML files. So here's an example of one that could be a video referencing a YouTube video. And you can see it's just this little HTML snippet. And there's a couple of cool things going on here into the snippet. So number one is that with attributes, you can now use the money sign symbols in between words. And so you can use those as attributes. And so in this example here, you can see that there's the title and ID values for the video title and the YouTube video ID. They're referenced in these code spots, and you can use an attribute multiple times in the code if its value needs to be repeated in several spots. And so attributes are what help make these helpers configurable and reusable. So you can see those in the separate places there in the code, which is great because it works in the HTML. You can use it in inline CSS styling, attributes, even the URL. So it's very flexible. But what's great is that the helpers now support frontmatter, which to me is very powerful and the typical behavior you see with static site generators. So these can act as variables that can be set to any number, string, color, etc. And so you can see how the frontmatter here declares the href attribute, which defaults to this YouTube video link that resolves to the ID attribute provided by the user. So by declaring the video helper href in this fashion, it's a much more flexible, and you can just see how that would then be populated down into the attribute references as a part of that sort of definition there. Additionally, you'll notice in the code there's the three dots right in the middle, the ... This can be used as a special marker indicating that there's an open and closed tag in the body or within child elements that should be injected. And so for this example here with the video, there's this copy of new 2018 compilation, blah, blah, blah. That will then be injected at the point that the helper code starts with the ... So that is a way to inject code directly in. And then for conditionals and scripting, helper now has the ability to use Ruby scripting within the code, and you can now create dynamic values based on what you provide, based on the values of the attributes. So in the example above, the conditional allowed the helper to decide whether or not the play button is added after the video description. So by default, there was the play button was included by default. But if the helper is invoked with the no-play-button Boolean attribute, it will be skipped. So conditionals can access any attribute value passed to the helper, not just Boolean attributes like this one. So you get conditionals and scripting functionality. It's just very flexible. So these are some nice updates to helper in the Inkcite platform. If you haven't checked out Inkcite, I really encourage you to. It's definitely one of the best workflows out there and sort of modular systems for email out there. I'll definitely have to have Jeff on at some point to talk more about Inkcite and definitely spend more time on future shows going over it. But this was a new update and pretty powerful. So great job to Jeff and Inkcite. A new tool that's out there now is Postie. Postie is a way for users to have their Instagram feed run email campaigns for them. So it's really simple. You can just come and submit your Instagram URL, your username, to get a quick demo as to how this works. But essentially what happens is Postie will just come, it connects to your Instagram and grabs your most recent post with your photos used and the copy and text. So it's sort of an Instagram first way. So I could see this if you're somebody, or if you know somebody who doesn't know anything about email marketing, or let's say they have a really strong use case for Instagram. This is a way that they could probably get started with email marketing just by having Instagram run their content. And so you can just come connect your Instagram. You can import your database of subscribers if you have any already. And then you can customize everything. They have a drag and drop builder. You can customize exactly the look and feel of every single campaign and the copy and all of that. And it even gives you campaign metrics once you send it out. And what's also interesting now too is that they have this new feature called collaborations, to where they're letting content creators collaborate with one another. So maybe you are doing a Postie email campaign. You can have another brand that you would want to feature pay for them to be featured in your brand. So maybe not direct competitors, but maybe something that aligns really well with your subscribers. They're using that as a way to get promoted and to get paid, which is, I think, just an interesting approach. So I just thought this was something different, interesting to take a sort of an Instagram first approach to email marketing. Maybe it's a way to get people in the door and get familiar with email marketing. And they do have pricing that's based off a scaling volume number of subscribers. So check it out. Maybe you like it. Postie. And then finally, just some quick news. Adestra was acquired by Upland Software for, what was the number? I believe it was like $54 million, something like that. Forgot it already. And of course, it's hard to find in the press release, but I believe it was 54 million. I do remember the one that really sticks out is they reference $18 million in annualized revenue. And so looking it up on LinkedIn, Adestra had 171 employees. So that's just over 100K revenue per employee. And in the press release, they mentioned Adestra provides more than 400 leading brands. So if you're to take the revenue divided by the number of brands, that comes out to about a deal size between $40,000 to $45,000. So just interesting. You don't typically see metrics being reported like that from ESPs or acquisitions like this. There are a ton more numbers in the press release that you can get crazy about if you wanted to, but just figured, a bunch of ESP activity lately with acquisitions, figured I'd mention it. So Adestra gets acquired. Definitely on the smaller side compared to, obviously it's not something in the billions, which is nuts for something like Marketo, but probably just something cool to benchmark against and just know in terms of the industry where they were at and their market size there. So, all right, that's been this edition of the Kevin Mandeville Show. A reminder, kevinmandeville.com/newsletter. Subscribe. Get all the podcasts or shows into your inbox here. Subscribe on YouTube. You'll get notified when we go live on air, and you'll get a feed in your YouTube subscription to make sure you catch up on all the latest episodes. And we go live every Tuesday and Thursday, 12 p.m. Eastern time. And check out Email Tees, emailtees.com, at Email Tees, Instagram, Twitter. Give it a follow, buy a shirt, rock your email geekdom. All right, see you next time, Email Geeks. Bye.